5 pregnant women vanished into thin air across Hebei province in just 6 months during 2002, sparking terror of a ruthless pregnancy hunter. One moment they were there, shopping, heading home, even resting in their own apartments; the next, gone without a trace, leaving behind only bewildered families and rising panic. The city of Stonehaven held its breath as police hunted a phantom, seemingly targeting the most vulnerable members of society. But the horrifying truth they eventually uncovered, hidden deep within a squalid, secret cellar, was far more twisted than anyone imagined, revealing a shocking accomplice whose betrayal cut deeper and darker than the killer's own blade. The nightmare began on the night of February 16, 2002, in a residential complex in the Chang'an district of Stonehaven City, Hebei province. Lauren Liu, a 34-year-old woman 7 months pregnant, was reported missing by her frantic family. Chillingly, she had vanished right under her husband's nose. According to Jack Zhang, Lauren's husband, around 11:30 p.m., she mentioned stepping out to buy a late-night snack. But she never returned. Initially, Jack thought she might have gone for a short walk to relax, but after an hour passed with no sign of her, worry turned to panic. Jack rushed down to the apartment lobby, searching frantically. He questioned the security guard, only to be told no one had left the building. This was the early 2000s, an era before ubiquitous security cameras, leaving no digital trail of her movements. Desperate, Jack immediately called the police. Officers arrived and conducted a thorough search of the entire area, the apartment complex, surrounding parks, artificial ponds, emergency exits, and even Jack and Lauren's own apartment, but found absolutely nothing. The late hour meant there were no witnesses. Even the lobby security guard admitted he had dozed off around that time. The nearest late-night food stall confirmed that no pregnant woman matching Lauren's description had come by. The investigation hit a dead end almost immediately. By February 17th, there was still no news of Lauren Liu. As police delved deeper, the fact that she was heavily pregnant struck a chord, reminding them of something ominous. Her disappearance eerily matched a disturbing pattern emerging in the region. Over the previous 6 months, at least 4 other similar missing person cases had been reported, and all the victims were pregnant women. This chilling coincidence led police to classify Lauren's case as part of a potential serial crime spree. According to police information released at the time, the first case occurred on February 26th. Wendy Wang, 26 years old and 6 months pregnant, vanished in the afternoon while home alone in Xiaoduo village, Xingtang County. Then, on April 11th, 19-year-old Lily Lee disappeared on her way home. The calls kept coming. On May 30th, Sarah, 30, went missing, followed by Susan Su, 24, on July 4th. Both Sarah and Susan were between 3 and 7 months pregnant and had vanished mysteriously, leaving no clues behind. Recognizing the terrifying possibility of a serial predator or group targeting expectant mothers, police immediately shifted strategy, abandoning isolated investigations to focus on all 5 cases collectively. Let's look back at the earlier disappearances. The first victim, Wendy Wang, lived in Xiaoduo village. On the evening of February 26th, her mother-in-law returned from the market to find the house empty. Wendy, heavily pregnant and physically weakened, would have found it difficult to travel far. Police interviewed neighbors, but everyone had been busy preparing dinner and hadn't noticed anything unusual. However, investigators did find one crucial clue: a man's footprint, size 42, near the eastern wall by the open kitchen window. It couldn't belong to a passerby, as behind the wall lay agricultural land being prepared for planting. A neighbor also recalled seeing Wendy in her front yard around 5 p.m., assuming she was just getting fresh air. This placed her disappearance between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m., the time her mother-in-law returned. Despite extensive efforts over months, no trace of Wendy Wang was found. If she were alive, her baby would have been born, yet checks at all maternity clinics and hospitals in Stonehaven yielded nothing. The grim possibility that Wendy was no longer alive couldn't be ignored. Just 2 months later, police received another missing person report, this time for Lily Lee, a first-year college student living near her campus dormitory. Her family reported that Lily had called her mother that afternoon, saying she'd visit home over the weekend. But by evening, she was unreachable. Her roommate stated that around 5 p.m., Lily had put on light makeup, changed clothes, and said she was popping out to buy a few things at the market near the school. She never came back. Vendors at the market confirmed they hadn't seen her that day. Shockingly, Lily's family only learned about her pregnancy after she disappeared. Suspicion initially fell on her 22-year-old boyfriend, Leo Liu, but he had a solid alibi and was quickly cleared by police. At this stage, investigators hadn't yet connected the two disappearances due to the victims' different locations and lifestyles. It wasn't until Sarah Zhao vanished that the terrifying pattern became clear. Although police implemented preventative measures, tragically, the fourth and fifth victims still fell prey to the predator. Panic gripped Stonehaven. Maternity hospitals beefed up security. Pregnant women were advised never to be alone, with family members staying close 24/7. The terrifying moniker, the pregnancy hunter, exploded in the media within days, casting a shadow of fear over the entire local population. 5 victims in 6 months placed immense pressure on the police. Crucially, none of the 5 women knew each other. Although all lived in the greater Stonehaven area, they resided in different districts. The killer's methods and motives remained elusive. The only certainty was that they were dealing with a deeply disturbed individual, possibly with a pathological hatred towards pregnant women. The seemingly random selection of victims suggested the perpetrator had significant free time or a very flexible job. Geography became the key focus. Police believed that despite the lack of personal connections, there had to be a common location, a geographical intersection point that brought the victims close to their abductor. Acting on this theory, on September 23rd, the Stonehaven investigation team meticulously compiled the movements of all 5 women from February to August. The breakthrough came quickly, excluding Lauren Liu, the most recent victim living in the city district. The other 4 women had all visited hospitals in the Chang'an District 1 to 2 months before their disappearance, primarily for prenatal checkups or consultations. Although they didn't visit the same facility, this vital clue pointed to Chang'an District as the killer's hunting ground. It was the first significant sign of hope in the chilling series of disappearances. On September 24th, every maternity hospital in Chang'an District came under intense scrutiny. Doctors, nurses, security staff, cleaners, everyone was interviewed. Investigators cast a wide net, even questioning vendors and regular taxi and motorcycle taxi drivers operating outside the hospital gates, determined not to miss a single detail. The large-scale investigation took days, yielding numerous leads, but most were eventually ruled out after careful screening. Finally, on September 30th, a crucial piece of information surfaced outside the Chang'an Maternity Hospital. Mrs. Zheng, a long-time drinks vendor there, remembered seeing Lily Lee, the student who vanished on April 11th. She recalled Lily vividly young and strikingly beautiful. Lily had sat at her stall, chatting for about 10 minutes. Then, a tall young man arrived on a motorcycle to pick her up. They spoke briefly, argued, and the young man sped off, leaving Lily to find her own way home. The man Mrs. Zheng described was Leo Liu, Lily's boyfriend, who had previously admitted to arguing with her about potentially terminating the pregnancy. While significant, this alone wasn't enough to implicate him again. Police continued digging and soon learned something else from Ken Ju, the husband of Sarah Zhao, missing since May 30th. On the day Sarah visited the hospital in mid-May, she had taken a bus alone and returned alone, as she had given birth before and her husband was busy. That evening, Ken noticed Sarah acting strangely irritable and silent towards him. Yet, the next morning, Her mood had completely flipped. She was cheerful, talkative, and even prepared a lavish breakfast for him. This 180-degree mood swing, though not alarming to Ken at the time, struck the police as suspicious. Investigators immediately checked bus, coach, and taxi records for May 30th, tracing Sarah's journey from her home in Lukwon to Changan. She boarded a bus at 6 a.m., arriving in Changan around 7 a.m. She registered at the hospital around 8 a.m. and left by 10 a.m. However, her return bus ticket showed she boarded at 4 p.m. This meant there was an unexplained 6-hour gap, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., where she remained in Changan. Her family confirmed she had no relatives or friends there, and had never done this before. Police strongly suspected this large window of unaccounted time was when she encountered her abductor. Focusing their search within a 1-kilometer radius of the hospital, police canvassed every shop and street vendor. But just as they felt progress was being made, a devastating phone call extinguished all hope. On September 8th, residents of Rui village in Jinxing County, about 67 kilometers from Changan, reported finding a woman's body stuffed in a sack floating in the river. The victim was quickly identified as Wendy Wang. Her body was severely decomposed and bloated, indicating she had been dead for at least 3 months. There were no signs of blunt force trauma, but the discovery sent shivers down everyone's spines. Her abdomen had been crudely cut open. Internal organs were severely damaged by imprecise knife cuts and prolonged immersion in water. No organs were missing, but the 6-month-old fetus she carried was gone. The placenta had been cut away, and her uterine wall showed signs of severe inflammation. The jagged edges of the cuts suggested the killer used a non-surgical tool, possibly a butcher knife, multiple times. It was clear the perpetrator had attempted to remove the baby without any medical knowledge, a brutal act that likely killed both mother and child. This horrifying discovery transformed the case from serial kidnapping to serial murder, deepening the dread felt across Stonehaven. Police hopes of finding the women alive dwindled. Wendy Wang's body was sent for autopsy. Her clothes and the sack were meticulously examined. She went missing in February and likely died around late June. Yet her clothes weren't worn or torn as expected after months of captivity. They were confirmed to be her original clothes, meaning the killer had deliberately redressed her after death, likely to remove any trace evidence. The killer's calculated precision was chilling, but it only strengthened the investigators' resolve to bring him to justice. Meanwhile, the interviews around the hospital finally bore fruit. A resident recalled seeing Sarah Jo getting into a white pickup truck outside the hospital on the day she vanished. This contradicted her usual mode of transport. Furthermore, the hospital security guard confirmed he had asked a white pickup truck with a Hebei license plate to move from that exact spot, as it was a no-parking zone. He described the driver as a man aged between 30 and 40, wearing a hat that obscured his face. The man in the white pickup truck instantly became suspect number 1. The challenge now was identifying this specific truck among countless white pickups, without even knowing the make or model. The lead investigator insisted this was their only solid lead. At the time, pickup trucks weren't as common as today, but several brands like Chrysler Motors, Nissan, and Isuzu were prevalent. The team split into 3 groups, each focusing on one brand, while also contacting transport companies to identify drivers operating near the hospital during the relevant period. Against the odds, the needle in a haystack search yielded results faster than expected. Within days, they identified several trucks that were in the area. An even bigger break came when a witness stepped forward. A driver named Ken Yang, 34, working for Changan Transport Company, reported seeing another driver, Mark Ma, in a Nissan pickup near the hospital on the day in question. Ken had kindly reminded Mark Ma that parking was prohibited there, but Mark seemed indifferent. Ken knew Mark Ma as a freelance driver, not tied to any company, giving him a flexible schedule. Ken had encountered Mark Ma a few times at drivers' diners and described him as cold, quiet, but not arrogant. Investigators tracked down Mark Ma using a phone number obtained from businesses he'd delivered for. Posing as a cement store owner needing transport, they arranged a meeting. That same afternoon, Mark Ma arrived at the rendezvous point. Upon realizing his clients were police officers, Mark Ma showed no fear and was surprisingly cooperative, leading investigators to doubt their own suspicions. Mark Ma admitted giving Sarah Zhou a ride that day. He claimed she approached him near the hospital entrance that morning and asked him to wait for her, even though he knew parking wasn't allowed there. He initially refused, suggesting she walk a bit further out, but she offered a significantly higher fee, persuading him to wait. He stated he drove her to a restaurant about 5 kilometers from the hospital and promptly left. Police verified his story by visiting the restaurant, where the owner confirmed Sarah Zhou had eaten there and left alone on foot. With this corroboration, Mark Ma was seemingly cleared of suspicion. However, nagging doubts remained. The investigators found inconsistencies. Mark Ma claimed Sarah hired him just to drive her to the restaurant, but her financial situation wasn't such that she could afford a relatively expensive pickup for a short trip. Logically, she would have opted for a cheaper motorcycle taxi, which could have picked her up closer to the hospital entrance. For the price she allegedly paid Mark Ma, she could have comfortably taken a regular taxi. While these were just deductions, the suspicion surrounding Mark Ma lingered. Weeks passed. On August 8th, nearly a month after the last disappearance, the grim discoveries continued. Late that night, the body of Susan Su, missing since July 4th and 4 months pregnant at the time, was found in a public trash bin on a street just 15 kilometers from Chang'an. Police rushed to the scene, sealing it off. It was past midnight, the streets deserted, allowing the crime scene to be preserved almost perfectly. Similar to Wendy Wang, Susan Su's body was in a large sack tied tightly with red nylon rope. A strong odor emanated from the sack, but the body showed only initial signs of decomposition, suggesting she had been killed 1 to 2 weeks prior. The autopsy revealed no significant external injuries, except for ligature marks around her wrists, where the skin was bruised and necrotic, indicating she had been bound tightly. Unlike Wendy, her abdomen was intact. Instead, an internal examination showed her cervix was dilated nearly 10 centimeters. It appeared she had given birth, likely succumbing to infection afterward due to lack of proper care. The unborn child was missing. The killer's relentless cruelty horrified everyone involved. His motives remained incomprehensible. Dumping the body on a public street suggested he had only been there a few hours before. This potentially made tracing his movements easier. That very night, police split into 2 teams, one securing the scene, the other canvassing the surrounding area for evidence. This time, luck seemed to be on their side. An elderly homeless man living nearby provided a crucial piece of information. He reported seeing a man rummaging near the trash bin just 2 hours earlier. Due to the darkness and distance, he couldn't see the man's face clearly, but noted he was tall, thin, and driving a 4-door car. The investigative team immediately contacted traffic police for assistance, setting up multiple roadblocks on major routes. Area patrols were mobilized. Every white car moving through the area that night was stopped and checked. However, most were either taxis or family cars passing through. This discrepancy puzzled the investigators. The killer was believed to operate within Stonehaven. How could he have vanished so quickly? Then, they remembered another type of vehicle sometimes referred to generally as a car, a pickup truck. Given that pickups weren't ubiquitous, perhaps the homeless man had misidentified the vehicle type. Acting swiftly on this revised theory, the checkpoints soon flagged several white pickup trucks moving during that time frame in the nearby Xinhua district. Astonishingly, one of them belonged to Mark Ma, their recurring person of interest. Mark Ma, already under suspicion, appearing near another crime scene, immediately drew intense scrutiny. More damningly, his physical description, tall and thin, perfectly matched the homeless man's account. His truck was searched on the spot, from the driver's seat to the cargo bed. Once again, nothing obviously incriminating like bloodstains or hair was found up front. Aside from personal items, phone, cigarettes, matches, adhesive tape, there was only canned food and water. Lacking concrete evidence, police had no choice but to let Markmar go again. But this time, the investigators couldn't shake the feeling that these coincidences were anything but random. A covert investigation into Markmar was officially launched. Markmar, 35, was a freelance driver living in Zuoling village, Qiaoxi town, about 20 kilometers from Chang'an. He lived with his wife, Emily Zhang, 32, who sold vegetables at the market. Their life was described as quite dull. Neighbors characterized Markmar as eccentric, quiet, and fierce-looking. They shared accounts of him frequently yelling at and hitting his wife, who endured it silently. On August 10th, while Markmar was out working, 2 officers visited his home in Zuoling village to speak with Emily Zhang. The simple, single-story house felt cold and sparse. Although tidy inside, the absence of children made it feel desolate. Emily appeared frail. Despite wearing long sleeves, visible bruises and scratches hinted at domestic violence. She greeted the police cheerfully, but became defensive when asked about her husband, denying any abuse and claiming her injuries were due to her own carelessness. Realizing they wouldn't get much from her directly, the officers probed about her husband's recent behavior. She remained silent until they stood up to leave. Then, Emily spoke. She revealed that recently, her husband had been leaving early and returning late. While the physical abuse had lessened considerably, she felt an unprecedented coldness from him. He had also cut back on household expenses and started taking food out of the house. Despite these strange changes, she admitted she was too afraid to question him. The officers left with heightened suspicion about Markmar. Meanwhile, the surveillance team reported no unusual activity from him. Critically, the size 42 footprint found at Wendy Wang's house was confirmed to match Markmar's shoe size. On the evening of August 12th, the surveillance paid off. After finishing work as usual, Markmar drove from Chang'an towards Luancheng district. This sudden deviation caught the surveillance team off guard. They requested backup from the local station and tailed him closely. After an hour's drive, Markmar stopped at a pharmacy on the road. As he went inside, one officer quickly followed him in to investigate, while the others continued watching the truck. When Markmar came out, he unexpectedly made a U-turn at a red light and headed back towards his hometown, Qiaoxi. It was unclear if he had spotted the tail or had other reasons for abandoning his 2-hour round trip. At the pharmacy, the pharmacist confirmed Markmar was a regular customer who often bought gauze, painkillers, and other medical supplies. Markmar had told the pharmacist he frequently had work-related accidents and bought supplies in bulk to keep on hand and share with colleagues. His last purchase had been over a month ago. The accumulating clues pointing towards Markmar made it increasingly difficult to believe he wasn't involved. Before entering the final phase, let's recap. 5 pregnant women missing since February 26th, 2 confirmed dead, Wendy Wang, Susan Su, 3 still missing, Lily Li, Sarah Zhao, Lauren Liu. All victims unconnected personally but linked geographically to Chang'an district before vanishing. Prime suspect Markmar. Circumstantial evidence footprint match. Known contact with one victim, Sarah Zhao. Presence near 2 body disposal sites. Suspicious behaviors, buying medical supplies. Erratic driving. Wife's testimony about changes. Motive remained unknown. Based on the mounting evidence, Markmar was designated a high-priority suspect. On the night of August 13th, a special task force conducted another sudden search of Markmar's property, including his truck and a shed in the backyard. This time, they found something on the truck. They noticed the rear left tire had been recently replaced. Just 5 days prior, during the roadside check, That tire showed no signs of recent repair. The surveillance team confirmed Mark Ma hadn't visited any repair shops during those 5 days. He must have changed it himself, perhaps at a rest stop. Upon meticulous examination of the wheel rim, they discovered a minuscule speck of dried blood. It was carefully collected for forensic analysis. The shed yielded nothing unusual. The following day, police observed Mark Ma leaving home with a large black bag, securely tied with rope, loaded into the back of his truck. He didn't head to work but drove towards Luancheng again, the same direction as 2 days prior. This time, he bypassed the pharmacy and continued towards a rural area. He finally stopped at an abandoned wooden house. Mark Ma carried the large black bag inside and closed the door. Over 5 minutes passed in silence. No sounds came from within. Unable to wait any longer, the investigative team decided to storm the house. But when they burst through the door, the house was empty. Mark Ma couldn't have simply vanished. Then, they noticed it underfoot. Hidden beneath scattered straw was an iron hatch. The truth was sickeningly clear. The creak of the old iron hatch being lifted alerted those below. No one was prepared for what lay beneath. Mark Ma, startled by the police presence, grabbed a knife and pointed it towards 3 terrified, emaciated figures, threatening to harm them if the police didn't let him go. The cellar was surprisingly spacious, about 4 square meters, allowing 2 more officers to descend. The first sight that hit them was horrifying. 3 young women, gaunt and weak, hair matted, their pregnant bellies heavy, chained to the wall. The stench of human waste mingled with the metallic tang of blood was overwhelming, causing the officers to momentarily gag. Mark Ma yelled threats continuously. To de-escalate the situation and prevent him from harming